Oh yeah, we got to overturn.
You're listening to the E-Men, inside the NYPD's Emergency Service Unit. Volume 21 of this miniseries now. 21. It's crazy to say. We started out last year, like I said, with John Lampkin, and snowballed from there. You know, different guys have come on and told different stories. And tonight should be not for the faint of heart. I will say that, but also it should be as equally as interesting as previous volumes. Of course, welcome back to the Mike the New Haven podcast. Yet another episode. Like I said, if you haven't checked out the previous episode, that was volume 24. Yeah, 24 of the best, the bravest interviews with the FDNY's elite commissioner, Dan Nigro, was on. Dan, of course, enjoyed a 33-year career initially with the fire department, retired in 2002, then came back as a commissioner. That was a great run for him. 8 years there, 33rd commissioner in FDNY's history, a true lifer of the fire service. And it was good to hear his experiences from start to most recently finish as he stepped down, retired after a well-deserved run in February of this year, actually. So we go from that right back to the E-Men inside the NYPD's Emergency Service Unit for episode 204. With my next guest, who in a dozen years lived more lives than a cat, an original member of the New York City's famed and fallen housing police. He cut his teeth in the hot streets of Harlem and Police Service Area 6 before morphing into a rescue cop, saddling up for an 8-month journey with the Emergency Rescue Unit before a summer 1994 absorption brought him to the Bronx's Truck 3, where he'd work under every scenario imaginable until retiring in 2002. And that is for volume 21 of the E-Men inside the NYPD's Emergency Service Unit, one Big Joe Guerra. Joe, welcome. How are you?
I'm good, thank you. Humbled to be here.
Thank you. Good to have you. And we'll get right into it. Tell me where you grew up.
I grew up in the South Bronx. I grew up in Patterson Houses, projects right across from where the new Lincoln Hospital is. It wasn't as bad as it is now, but it was getting there. I was there before it turned into like a really bad neighborhood. The projects back then were for the working class. You had my neighbors were postal workers, which my father was a postal worker. I had police officers who were, neighbors, firemen, sanitation. It was mostly like city workers and just the worker bees that lived in the public housing back then. So it was okay in the 60s, and then it got progressively worse after, just the way the neighborhoods changed.
Kids of your era, and I've talked about this before with different generations. I feel like my generation was the last one. Even though technology was around, we still played outside. This generation, forget about it. But back then, you guys were always outside. Growing up in the projects, given where your career would later take you, did you see the housing police a lot?
Actually, yeah, we knew our housing officer. He was a steady, that was his sector. He had the 3 projects there. It was Patterson, Mount Vernon, forget the name. I think it was Mount Vernon projects, and then the Mitchell houses. And you would see the 2 or 3 guys that were always there. But again, back in later on, it got a lot worse. But in the beginning, he was just the guy that just used to walk the beat. And we got guys from the 4-0 walk through the projects. It was, it wasn't. There was a steady same stream of guys.
Is that what made? Sorry,
go ahead.
No, I was going to say, is that what made you fall in love with the job and want to do it, seeing them?
No, it's funny because how I fell in love with the job was when the neighborhood started to go crappy. I used to be like what's known as a windowsill guy. A kid, I would sit on my windowsill. This is days before we didn't fall out of our windows. For some reason, we didn't fall out of our windows, and I'm 9 stories up. And I was, a very studious student, so I was always study by my window. And one day there was a job, call it a job now because I was a cop, but there was a woman across the street on a roof ledge. And she was apparently in a white nightgown with, barefoot, tippy-toed. She was about to jump. She was a jumper. And I'm like, wow, this poor, woman. And of course, the street down is like telling her to jump, whatever. And I saw like a couple of precinct cops talking to her. And then I heard what I thought was a fire truck. I'm hearing that siren. I'm like, what? I see this truck. It's police on it. I'm like, who are these guys? Because we never saw emergency service. I didn't know what emergency service was. And these guys got out. I remember distinctly because they had baseball caps on. And they put on this big belt and they went into the building and they went up there. They tied themselves off. And I'm watching this because I was 9 stories up and it was one of the low-rise buildings, like 6, 7 stories. And they're talking to, and all of a sudden the same crowd that was telling her to jump or whatever, when they grabbed her and saved her life, everybody cheered. So I was like, wow, if I want to become, I want to go to those guys. I would never thinking that I would ever become an ESU cop, but I was like, wow, those guys are cool. And I always, followed that quote unquote SWAT, because then I later found out that they were SWAT type, officers, and they did everything.
Mhm.
And that was my biggest thing about wanting to become a cop. I just saw it's like I thought it was cool. I thought it was nice because then you see the police helicopter and stuff, and you were like, wow, it's more than just the beat cop. It's just the guy just swinging a nightstick.
Right.
So I just kind of like said, that might be something I want to do, and I kind of fell in love with it from there.
Joe Guerra is our guest tonight for Volume 21 of the E-Men inside the NYPD's Emergency Service Unit. If you got a question for him in the chat, of course, fire away. Let me shout out to some of you who are already tuning in. A lot of you guys were looking forward to this one. Jay Driscoll, he's always here, and I appreciate it. Christian Williams, Rick Martinez is watching. He was especially looking forward to this one. Hey, Rick. Joe Maliga, Bill Ryan. Good man, Rick. Retired first grade detective, I should say. Can't speak today. Out of the Arson Explosion Squad. Jeff Dito's watching. He says, looking good, Jose. James Burns, same thing. Looking good, brother. Pete Pranzo, retired NYPD Street Crime Lieutenant. Steve-O, also retired lieutenant. And Bill Kennedy is watching, of course, retired sergeant. So good.
All great guys.
Terrific
Great guys. I mean,
terrific.
They're so knowledgeable, like you wouldn't believe.
Oh,
That's a big thing being an E-Man. You want to be knowledgeable in the job.
Mm-hmm.
Knowledge trumps academia. I mean, not knowledge, experience trumps academia every time in this business.
Of course, I agree wholeheartedly. And Steve Zaslavsky, too, forgot to acknowledge you, my friend. He's a fire commissioner here in my neck of the woods in New Haven. And that's the interesting thing about emergency. I think it might have been you that said this in the A&E documentary, that it's not just putting bad guys away. That's important, too, obviously, so doing search warrants, perp searches, and things like that. You get to save people in ESU, and you saw it firsthand with something like that.
That was actually the major thrust. Even in a job where you would call a gun job or a perp search or whatever, we're still in the process of our main objective is to everybody goes home with all their fingers and toes, so to speak. You want to save. We're not here to take a life. Never were. I mean, is that part of it? Occasionally, yeah, that happens. But if we do rescue, it's all about saving lives. We were a service oriented unit. I mean, first of all, we never turned down a job.
Right.
It could be something small. An officer drops his radio inside a sewer. We'll get it for him. I mean, hey, it is what it is. It's something major like a 9/11. And this notion that we were just like going after the bad guys. No, that's a portion of the job. But a lot of it was rescue. I mean, everything from rescue to someone stuck in the elevator. That's our job. All trained as minimum EMTs. So we did medical rescues. Sometimes EMS is backlogged. So we became the techs. Delivered babies. I've delivered 3 babies while I was a cop, not including my own. Those were done in a proper facility. But yeah, it's wonderful being able to make a difference in someone's life.
Mm-hmm.
And that was the main thrust of why I love doing what I was doing.
And of course, for those of you who are non-Hispanic about the nightgown, we call those patitas. And that's the first word that popped into my head because I used to see my grandma one of those at the house all the time. The little patitas.
Yeah, I'll tell you a story about that. Anytime I had to go into surgery, because I'm a big guy, they don't make them my size, so I had the maternity ones on. I'm like, really, guy? So I got a giant pink whatever with Snoopy on it. I'm like, great. Yeah, humiliate me on my way to the ER. But that happened a couple of times. It was funny.
There's a visual.
Yeah. You don't want that in your head.
No. Carl Smith, he's saying, Joe G, one of our best. Good to see you.
Oh, Carl, great guy, great sergeant. Oh my gosh, nice, nice to hear from him. I got a great picture with him and Cam Smith. Really nice man.
Tuning in via LinkedIn. See, I don't know if you remember him. He says, this is Robert Schechter. He finished up as a sergeant. Great to see Original Housing, old PSA 8 here.
Again, I'm going to apologize up front. Because of the head injury, I forget certain people's face. The face looks familiar. If I see the face, I'll definitely know the person. I'm just bad with names. I have very bad short-term memory.
Understandably. So 89-90, by this point, the 3-department academy system has been well established. They're not having individual academies for housing exclusively or transit exclusively anymore. Now it's you go through the NYPD Academy and either you get the city at this stage or you get trans, you get housing. I think some people even get MTA, at least back then. So, you got housing. And you were telling me off the air an interesting story of how you going to housing came to be. So why don't you tell the audience?
Well, originally I was slated to go into transit. And no offense to transit, I'm not a fan of trains. And I was, I'm going to take the job because my class was canceled right before the academy class I was supposed to go into. So for a whole year, I had to wait. I was supposed to go into an 89 class and ended up going to a 90 because at the time the Mayor Dinkins had for budget cuts canceled that class. And we were told the night before. It was horrible. I mean, I quit my job the whole night. So then I got transit. I'm like, hey man, beggars can't be choosy. I'm gonna take the transit. And when I was there, at some point we're all there, and this guy was trying to get into transit, and he got housing. And it turns out it's because his father was a chief or something. And he had asked, can he switch? Does anybody want to switch? I was like, yeah, I'll take housing. You want transit? You could have transit. I want to be up, I want to be above ground.
Right.
And I grew up in the project, so the project didn't scare me. It's, it's okay. And he was so happy, and they let it happen. The guy says, "Oh, you can't switch to NYPD." I'm like, "No, I get that, but this guy wants to go to transit. I'll take housing anytime, And it happened, so I lucked out.
You started out in Harlem in those
Mhm.
PSAs, and that was really, the last. I'm not knocking community policing now. I'm not saying it doesn't exist, but it's really hard to find the quintessential old school beat cop. And you guys had RMPs. You get around in the RMPs being above ground. You had to, of course, but it was primarily an emphasis on being on foot, doing those verticals. And what's nice about that is, yeah, you can run into some great collars, yes, but you really get to know the good people in that neighborhood too, and it creates a separate interaction from, okay, you called me because something's bad happening to you, and this is the worst
Mhm.
moment of your day, or if even worse yet, your life, and I'm here for that. You get to see people, in their docile state, their calmer state. So I imagine, we were saying off the air that housing was the best kept secret. That had to be one of the true joys of the job for you, especially being from the projects.
Uh, yeah, I always found that community policing was always relabeled. We've always had community policing, whether it's the beat cop. It depends on, of course, the precinct and the whole structure. But housing never went away from it. They had no choice. We always saw ourselves as the sheriffs of the town. Because I mean, sometimes you're the only cop. Again, it's funny you say RMPs. There was always a term like, "Oh, housing's not available." The reason was because back then we didn't have enough cars. We didn't have enough people. It was a very small department.
Right.
So sometimes, yeah, again, this is the '90s. Jobs were flourishing, and most of the stuff that was happening in the projects, or it made its way back into the projects. The beauty of where I work was we had a lot of good precincts that were, they understood that. You always get the disgruntled guy who's going to make that comment, but the rest of the guys knew that housing always backed you up, and they always backed us up on heavy jobs. But getting back to community policing, yes, you're correct. One of the things one of my first assignments was Wagner houses, which is over in the 2-5.
Mhm.
And I forget how many buildings they were, 16, 17 buildings. And I'm the only guy. Even though by labor rules supposed to be 2 cops, we didn't have 2 cops. We had the one guy. And yeah, you get to know the families. And the great thing is that when somebody's kids act up, you knew their mom or their dad. So you always bring it back to the source. And they were afraid somebody's kids back then. Still, you had mothers that would beat the kids. And I mean kids, I mean teenagers. They were doing what they're not supposed to be doing. So I didn't have to end up collaring and giving the kid a JD card or whatever. It's more like, hey, I want to go talk to your mother. So you knew the families,
That's
and you were
worse.
able. Yeah, exactly. No, I'll take the L. No, you're gonna go talk to your mom. We're gonna get this straightened out or whatever. And you had some of those problem, people, but the projects, for the most part, you got to know exactly there's working people there, there's good people there, and then you have mutts, the guys that are just up to no good. And the fact is, you still have to live with those guys. You kind of lived in those projects, and you always had to give people their dignity, which is one of the things that being a housing cop taught me. I'm not taking anything away. When I'm talking about strictly from my housing experience, I'm sure PD cops have the same thing at the time. But everybody wants their dignity. So if you have a bunch of guys hanging out in front of the projects, you're not supposed to hang out in front of the lobby. You're blocking the entrance for the ladies coming with their groceries. You give these guys an out. Listen, I'm gonna go around the block. When I come back, you guys better be gone. I'm giving you an out. Don't disrespect me, and I won't disrespect you. And you'll always get the guy that tests you, and that's the guy you send to, quote unquote, to the hospital. So he learns not to mess with the P cop. And that was the thing with housing. We didn't have time to play. It's different the way policing is done now, not because we had to throw hands, but we knew when to throw hands, and it was justified. And we had so many people that we collared that apologized to us because they knew they were wrong.
And you don't see that now, especially now when
No,
everybody's got the
you
phone.
don't. Well,
Yeah.
right, you don't. You can't talk about that because it's just that again, we don't want to get into the politics of it.
Right.
But back then there was. I mean, don't get me wrong. There's always been disrespect to law enforcement. There's always that element,
Right.
but it wasn't as universal and it wasn't as misplaced as it is today. So even though projects were bad, I mean, we had some really horrific jobs, but there was still a sense of there was some sort of control. Like if you're gonna do your dirt, you wait until I turn the corner. You didn't do it in front of me. You never challenged me, and if you did, you paid the price.
Right.
And
Right.
we didn't have to quote unquote shoot somebody of color. You knew that, hey, if you see little Johnny walking down the block limping, what happened? I was stupid. I took on Joe Guerra or whoever was working. It's like, they're gonna test you. And at the end of the day, you're it. You're the first line of defense there. And it got to the point, and in some projects that I remember working, St. Nicholas houses, which is kind of really crappy place, that I would be having a conversation with some guys, and it seemed to someone from a window that it was getting heated, and you'd have the grandmothers who hung out, they would call 911 and call in the 13 saying, "Oh, that officer needs some help." So you had the neighborhood backing you up. It
Right.
wasn't necessary, but it was nice to know, we're getting calls. I was like, no, everything's under control, slow them down. We're just having a conversation. But that would happen often to a lot of housing cops, not just me. It was just the people will call and go, "Hey, listen, that cop needs a little help. These guys, they're like 3 against 1, kind of thing." And that was kind of like, okay.
Because
But Harlem was very busy back then.
No, I imagine. I mean, before I continue, let me show the RMP. Were you driving this right here? What I had in the corner?
Yeah, the famous bubble car. We had the ones before it, and I had the Grand Furies, and we had what we used to call the Mets bullpen car, which
This
is
one?
the orange. Yeah, exactly. That was,
Yeah.
and that's my favorite RMP. I'm sorry, that's with the famous siren on it. I think it was on Mark 12, whatever they used to call it. That's my favorite RMP. The bubble car, I have a funny story about it. We didn't want to drive that. We were so desperate for police cars because they were wrecking them. I mean, we had so much ground to cover.
Right.
That the odds of getting into an accident, I'm going through 3 different precincts to get to a job, lights and sirens. You're gonna get tagged sooner or later. And they gave us the bubble car, like everybody's getting a turn. And me and my partner at the time, Kevin Maraglio, we were like, "Oh God, we don't want this car because we don't want to be the first ones to wreck it." Not to say that we wrecking cars. In fact, I never wasn't in a wreck up until I got that bubble car. And we were going down on 8th Avenue, 153, and we saw a 3-2 cop foot post holding a couple of guys at gunpoint. So we just pulled over. Let's see what's going on, and we got rear-ended. And somebody didn't see us stop. Rear-ended, sends us into a bodega.
Lovely.
And actually, the first time I couldn't get the door open. We were fine, thank God. We just shook up. But I remember the guys from 2 Truck had we were a pin job. They had to get the door. And then you got to put in heads in the whole 9. And we're like, wow. We weren't concerned about our health. We were like, we wrecked the new bubble car. That was like a big thing because you were told that roll call, don't wreck the new cars. And this thing jinxed us. But I remember the bubble car. 9766 was the vehicle too.
It was so they were so wide. And for Billy Kennedy in the chat, I'm gonna give him one because he calls this one the good humor truck, and I'll get to it later. So there's that beauty, and I'll talk about that beauty a little bit later. When you look back on those patrol years, before I get into ERU, is there an arrest that sticks out? I know it's tough to recall because of what you said earlier. Is there an arrest that sticks out though, where it was like, wow, that was a really good collar?
Actually, it was my first gun collar. It was one of the few first times I was in a vehicle. It was a robbery at gunpoint at Polo Ground houses, and we told of the job. We roll up and there's obviously a distraught female. And somebody had robbed her at gunpoint, took her purse or whatever. So all right, so we're gonna put her in the car and we're gonna canvass. So we're canvassing again down 8th Avenue because that was the main strip. All the projects. You had Polo Grounds, you had St. Nicholas, Drew Hamilton houses. You had all these Raglan houses, all of 8th Avenue. And she points out, "There's a guy right there." And I'm like, "Oh, okay." So I started, and then you see the guy, and I saw in his waistband that he had a firearm. So this was my first foot pursuit. And this is it's kind of funny how it ends up. So now I'm putting it over there, I'm in pursuit, giving a description. And I actually, have my 38 in the hand, and I'm chasing this guy, making the turn onto Bradhurst. And back then, again, I don't know how it is today, but you put foot pursuit over everybody and their mothers coming to this thing. So I'm making the turn. Actually, the perp's making the turn. I see him literally leap over a police car as it goes by. Literally leap. So then he kind of falls. I guess he must have twisted his ankle, whatever. Next thing I know, it was like Lawrence Taylor in a uniform, just piles on. And then his dog piled on the rabbit. So, anyways, after everything is said and done, they hand me this guy. Here's the gun, kid. Here's this. It's my car. I was like, wow, that's pretty cool. But the guy was like, he didn't know. He was like, what's your name? I like cookies. It's like he was out there. So I had to, take this guy and then like a new guy and bringing him in, and he's, bloodied or whatever. And the sergeant's like, he's got to go to the hospital. Kid. I was like, all right, so take him to the hospital. Anyway, going to court, back then was the thing where you had to go down to central booking and you lived down there until the DA saw you. It could be hours before they saw you, and then there's whatever.
It's still like that too.
Okay, so I mean, I'm out the game a while. So when the next time I see this perp, he's got what we used to call a turban. You know, he had the whole bandage thing on his head. So now it looks like I tuned this guy up. I mean, granted, the guy was a small little guy, but he was resisting. He was fighting back, and you know, guys did what they had to do. So you got the 6'4" cop holding this little guy, and I'm like, I didn't do this, you know. And then the 3-2 sergeant was the only one who had to go respond with me to see the DA because for some reason there was only 2 cars that they heard come over the air. And 3-2 sergeant was looking at me like, you know, this is a rookie mistake. And I was like, hey, they got to him before I did, whatever, and he fell. But that was my first collar. I remember it was a Davis 380 gun. And those were apparently, that was like, of the gun collars I had, almost every gun collar I had was like a Davis. That was like the gun of Harlem, I guess. Because I also had a livery cab robbery at gunpoint where the perp, and that was a gimme. I'm walking out the command. So the guy goes, that guy just robbed me with the livery cab. And the guy standing right there, just grab him, hey, got a gun collar, you know.
Say less.
But, you know, it was like that. One of my more memorable jobs was actually talking a guy off a roof as a patrolman. So that was cool. And again, that was something that, you know, gets saving a life. The guy was really just, you know, he was hurting. But stuff like that every day. You know, we were running jobs, and I wasn't a collar guy because there was always somebody who wanted the collar, and I was not like, yeah, take the collar, whatever. You know, they got some good collars, but nothing like I wasn't into the numbers, and that was the thing with housing. We were not numbers orientated back then. You know, we didn't have a set number of summonses you had to come to, you know, write and stuff like that. So that's why I said it was one of the best kept secrets, because we didn't have that kind of supervision, quote unquote supervision. Because we didn't have time for it. We were always running. I remember one of my counterparts, I think it was Pressure Point, was what the PD was calling it.
Yep.
Where they had a cop on every block, and I had guys from my company, and I across the street from the projects. There's, you know, obviously stores, fronts, and stuff, and I had the projects, and I'm walking around the whole project by myself, and the guy's like, I was like, come on over, I got a coffee machine. We had a record room, which was like a little office in the project for the typewriter. You had your paperwork there, and a coffee machine, and a bathroom. Hey, guy, come use our bathroom. Oh, we can't get off our post. Wait, what? You can't cross the street? It was like that.
Is that regimented?
Book, yeah, and then you look at their book, and it was signed by so many different people. And I'm like, oh, this is a new sergeant. So, yeah, he told me he's going to swing by around, you know, 1800 to sign my book. You know, he's going to tell me when he's coming around, because there was this trust. It was just a different atmosphere. And I got into a car a lot faster than the PD guys, because theirs is a 6-month, you know, field training apparently. Back then, I don't know how it is now.
It is the same now.
Housing was 6 weeks, and then you kind of by default you're in an RMP because you were short-handed. And then right after to a year, there was not the merger. There was lateral transfers were allowed, so a lot of guys left housing to go to PD. So now we pretty much lost our whole midnight tour at 6. So I ended up working doubles, you know, almost every day, working 4 to 12, and then, you know, staying for the midnight on overtime because we were so short-handed with people. Because everybody, buku dollars. Yeah, it was, you know, October was Christmas money. So, and then if you call it, forget about it. You're just being greedy. But at that point, because now you're going into the day tour. But it was that housing was a different animal because we were so short-handed. We were really short-handed as a department, and we had a lot of real estate to cover, from the 3-4 to the 2-5, east and west. You know, PSA 6 is a big area. And you're getting a job, you handle a job, Wagner houses, and like the Eddie Frank car is not available. Now I'm flying up the FDR Drive all the way to Dykeman houses, up at 233rd Street. It's like, it's crazy, you know, but that was the job.
Because at the apex of your ranks, I think, and I wrote about this recently, Transit had at their apex 4,000. You had 2,700, so even less.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that's why, you know, to your point about the community, they felt like they really knew you guys because, I mean, there wasn't that many cops. It was such a small
And then
department.
we had PCOs, we had precinct, you know, community officers, guys that were dedicated officers to that project, and they would attend all the community affairs meetings and all that stuff, and so everybody knew them. They knew them by first name sometimes.
Yeah,
it is what it is. But yeah, we were again the 90s when we had a change of mayor. We had Giuliani, who was proactive, and we were working. It was no longer, you know, not to say it wasn't community policing anymore. It was like clean up the streets, quality of life stuff became a very big priority
Broken
citywide.
windows. Broken windows.
Yeah, I never liked that term. I always thought it was more like quality policing because it wasn't just about property. It was about people's behavior on the streets.
Yeah.
You have a right to go from point A to point B without being harassed by a squeegee guy or just
Panhandler.
panhandling, just littering, stuff that just, hey, you live here. And, you have the right to have wherever you live, you have a right to live in a clean, neat neighborhood and be able to walk from point A to point B without being harassed. I'm not talking about a major crime. I'm talking about the little stuff.
Yeah, it's important.
So violations are, should be addressed, public urination and so forth.
Yes, that's very true because, the stuff like that, I mean, to Brad's point and to your point too, it kind of snowballs into the bigger stuff that before you know it, like you said, the neighborhood you grew up in, maybe it was that kind of stuff that led that neighborhood to, really going south.
And the whole concept of, and I think it was Bratton again, which I really respected him as a commissioner first time around, was you capture the little fish and you throw them out for a bigger fish, and that worked.
Right, it did. No, it worked. They had it down to a science for a while too. So that brings us to, I guess, to 1993, and transit had long since had the EMRU, Emergency Medical Rescue Unit, that came into play in the late 70s. Housing went by really without an ESU or an ERU, as you guys called it, for a long time. I imagine you guys would just call in, the city ESU if you needed them on a job.
Yeah, NYPD ESU, and the specialized units was the NYPD, and that's why so many people lateraled over because they wanted to go into those units prior to the merge.
Exactly.
Before there was even talks of a merge.
So, 93 is when ERU comes into play, New Year's Eve to be exact. And it wasn't around long. It was only around 8 months. But you got into it. So I know it was you, I think, was amongst many others. You, Latanzio, Lanos, and a few other guys went into that. What was that academy like? Did you go to NYPD STS for that one?
No. We had our own training regiment. We went to so many different, including transit, the Port Authority, the Emergency Service. We went to the Nassau County Fire Academy. We trained because we were waiting for our vehicles to come in. So we had a lot of training. I mean, we went into Fish and Wildlife. I think there was an EOD course. We went to the housing elevator mechanic school. Right. We were just constantly training, rope rescue, ROCO. I mean, we were just constantly training. The only thing we didn't have was the long guns. We didn't do any tactical training because we didn't have those yet at the time. So as far as rescue, that's all we did. Rescue, repelling, rescue elevators, medical. We went to it was all training. And it was great because when it came time to go to STS, a lot of it was a review and basically doing it the NYPD way, which was great. I mean, and then we had, of course, they're more advanced as far as, they had the helicopters, air sea rescue. You have the range now. You know how to operate different types of, firearms and so forth, and tactics and stuff like that. So it was, I thought we were like extremely well trained, the housing guys. I'm not taking anything away from ERU or from the transit guys because they had experience. Right. So we were pretty much new guys going into ESU, like the rest of the new guys that go into ESU. We just had a little more of a foundation as far as training.
And those trucks were so beautiful, man. I'm going to pull it back up because, to your point, the only thing you guys were carrying the same exact equipment as a city ESU or transit EMRU, except for those long guns, and even though it was around only 8 months, like I said, that's a beautiful truck right there. It's got the battering ram on the front. I mean, that really accentuated the fact that it was the best kept secret. What are the lights on top here for?
Yeah, it's a light kit, just to have portable lights to light up a scene, which, sometimes only the big trucks had it in. I don't know if NYPD had them at the time. And then we had a winch in the front of all the REPs, which was nice. So you could pull vehicles out and stuff like that. Other than that, it was pretty much the same vehicle. The one thing is that thing had so many radios in it. We had everything from, transit, citywide, the local precincts, ship to shore, whatever. We just had radios in that thing. It was and then we had it right at 1.3 of us in a vehicle. Because
so you got a guy, what, the middle seat?
Yeah, there was no middle seat. It's a bench seat. So the big guy always gets to drive. You don't want the little guy you're up against the screen. But they were nice. They were nice rigs. I loved them. They were heavy, But again, we were really, now we have burrows. We had like ESU, but ESU had the luxury of having a lot more vehicles for boroughs, and they could cut it back with two different trucks. Not us. We had like a Bronx Queens truck, so we covered Bronx and Queens. That's a lot of territory. It is. And then you have Brooklyn, Manhattan. So it was again, it was short lived.
Right.
which I had absolutely no problem with that. As far as I'm concerned, that was a gift when we merged into. That was a dream come true. It was just like quiet standing there. I remember going into emergency. I don't know if you ever have spoken to a great guy, Owen McCaffrey. He was my
Off the air,
sergeant.
yeah, not on the air. Yeah.
Great guy, and some advice. Like I always love to get advice from guys who just it sticks with your head. And he just said, shut the up and just do what you're told and fit in and just, and that's what you're supposed to do. You're the new guy on the block. Yeah, I probably had a lot more experience doing patrol work than some of the guys that I worked with who were in emergency because they came from quiet precincts or whatever. But that, okay, they was going to have this specialty, but I'm the new guy. Show me. And I had great field training officers. I don't even consider them field training officers. They just took you in and they trained you. I had Al Rosenthal, which is a great guy, Manny Hernandez. These guys were just. I had Charlie Gervin, was a great sergeant. You learn. I love him because for all the traditions, because you don't want to. I'm not there. I'm not here to change things. I'm here to go with the flow. Then there's a lot of history, and you learn a lot of respect for the history of emergency service. And I just wanted to hey, I've been blessed by being put into this unit, and I ended up saying it too, but I was told that a lot of people paid the rent for this, for this patch here. Sorry, it's backwards on my camera, but a lot of people gave a lot so that way you could walk down the block looking bad. Hey, she was on the scene. You still have to carry that weight, and you still have to perform because there's so much history behind that unit, and you don't want to be the guy that screws up not wearing this patch. Everybody looks to you. You're the go-to guys. I'm sure the motto of ESU.
Mm-hmm.
When the civilians need help, they call the police. When the police need help, they call emergency service. So that being said, that's a big weight to shoulder. And you know what? You have to have the right attitude for that. And the right attitude was like, hey, learn from the guy.
Yeah. Your sound cut out. Oh, okay, it's back now. You cut out for a second. Oh, now I can't hear you. I don't know where it went. Nope. Yeah, your mic's muted now. Well, we'll figure that one out. Talking with Joe Guerra here. This is volume 21 of the E-Man inside the NYPD's Emergency Service Unit. Wait for his sound to come back. No, I still can't hear you quite yet. I'll let you know when you come back in. Nope, can't hear you still. All right, there you go.
It says unmuted. I don't know what's going on.
Yeah, I don't know what happened there, but you're back now.
Okay, sorry about that.
No, it's all right. As you were saying.
So yeah, it was you learn from the guys in ESU, and you fit in perfectly. We didn't have a bad rapport with the guys from ESU because we weren't around that long. Mm-hmm. There was some bad blood at the beginning with transit and the NYPD's ESU because they've been around for a while, and it's just jurisdiction and man unders, and they could have that, whatever. But that being said, we were totally different animals. We were just surface creatures, just like the NYPD, and not to put away transit, but we had a lot more in common.
There was one job though. I mean, granted, it wasn't that long, because like I said, it was only 8 months. But there was the episode that we were talking about off the air where cops filmed with the New York City Transit Police. Franco was in this clip, and I showed it when he was on. It was a man under job where all three of you were there, meaning all three rescue units, because you had a housing guy. You could see it clearly. He's wearing the housing police cap, I should say, and he has the patch. He's helping with the train lift. And he's working that man under job alongside City ESU and Transit. So that was a brief overlap there. But like you said, just think about it. For those of you that don't know in the audience, Transit Police, like I said, they had the rescue unit in place from either 77 or 78. So by the time the merge came around in 95, that's 17 years. And then to the NYPD side, it's been around since 1930. So the time of the merge, it was celebrating its 65th anniversary of being around. So you talk about the history. There is a lot of history there.
There is a lot of history, yeah.
And that was a number of years ago. You can imagine the history's even, heightened more in the years since now, 92 years of existence for the NYPD Emergency Service Unit. So that merge, because, transit went in April of 95, fully. Everything went in, into the NYPD. But really, the merge of housing's rescue unit started prior. Then they got the rest of the MOS 9 months later. So you go through, as you said, that refresher course, and you get to 3 truck in the Bronx. And having worked in ERU and covering the Bronx and Queens, granted, as you said, you have to learn to do things the NYPD way. But do you feel that having worked in that neck of the woods previously as a rescue cop helped make that transition to Truck 3 easier?
I'm gonna be honest. I don't think that we had that much time out there to really make an impression. We were trying to do the job, obviously. We went there basically with our training and experience as cops. And we, not that we sat back, but we was like, okay, let's do it the NYPD way. It wasn't sort of like we were out there rocking and rolling as housing rescue. We had a couple of good jobs, don't get me wrong, but it wasn't, we weren't, I don't think, less than a year counts,
Yeah.
as a lot of experience. So it was more like, okay, let's see how they do it. And I do want to say that what we bled in was, and I'm not, nothing taken away from the guys from 3 Truck, but we were not used to being inside the command as much as when you come to the trucks. And there was times where, like, where you have downtime. Me and my partner at the time, Del Glover, we were out there hunting, not hunting for collars, but it's like, yo, this, we were hungry for experience. Let's get some jobs. And in the meantime, it seemed like, when you hear like a gun job and a post is going by himself, we would get on the radio and back them up. And all of a sudden, like, we found out real quickly, like, oh, why is ESU going to this job? It's just a gun run. I'm like, oh, I was a cop. We were still on that, in the cop mentality.
Right.
That, and I'm not saying that the other guys wouldn't do that if they're out on patrol, but we were just like, okay, it's dead. Let's go back up precincts. And it was just a little different. We were always out there. It was cool to show up to a foot post holding 3, and we roll up with our shotguns. It was like, oh, thanks, ESU. So that was kind of, our contribution to the truck. In the beginning, we were just like, we stayed out and get our job done. I wasn't gonna get comfortable yet. I'm a new guy, so right. I thought we were supposed to be out there doing the job. I'm not gonna get comfortable and take advantage of some of the beautiful perks of being an emergency service cop, because there's downtime, and then there's times where you're the last line of defense, and you're handling some heavy jobs, and you could see why there was this downtime.
Yeah.
So I was like, oh, that's pretty cool.
I'm going to get to the photos that you sent me momentarily, but I feel like, and it is an interesting point that you bring up with emergency, because that's exactly how they function, of course, going out there really on any job. And it doesn't, as you said earlier, it doesn't matter how silly it may seem on the surface, service is your middle name. As emergency service often also says, that's one of their other models. Service is our middle name. To give you a point, I mean, Bob Basucci was on the show a while ago from 1 Truck. There was a time when a woman's engagement ring went down, a drain, but that drain wasn't leading into the sewer. It was a bunch of electrical stuff around. I think it's one of those condensate things. He went down there and got it for her. So jobs like that anybody else would say, sorry, miss, we're not doing that. You guys would go down there and do it. And it's so good because, especially in an area like the Bronx, which is so vast, obviously you have 4 Truck there as well. The Bronx is where it's always happening. And that's no disrespect to the other trucks and the other boroughs. They're getting it done, of course. But the Bronx, I always felt, has been the busiest.
I'm going to agree with you, especially with EDPs, but also the Bronx, the level of work that we got and the lack of media attention is amazing. Yes. It was the exact opposite. Like, I guess the media did not want to go to the Bronx for some reason. They'll go to Brooklyn, they'll go to Queens, they'll go to Manhattan, definitely Manhattan.
Exactly.
But in the Bronx, you could literally, like, we just captured a T-Rex. It wouldn't make the 6 o'clock news. It just, it was like that. We're sitting there like, and then of course, by the time I don't know what it was, but the Bronx was never really covered.
No, I mean, somebody farts in Manhattan, though. They got it all over the 5 o'clock news.
Oh, absolutely. One of the things of being a new guy in emergencies that you flew like every freaking day. You went to another truck and you got to see all the other guys working. And we noticed that about certain trucks, like 1 Truck, the Hollywood Squad. I love those guys, but at first they thought we were lepers. It was just like, hey, and of course we get that. It was part of they got to get to know us, and we're the outsiders and so forth and so on. And it got to the point where, like, well, okay, these are not the transit guys. I always caught such a bad vibe that they didn't like the transit guys at first. And so that we kind of won them over with humor. We were just as demented as everybody else on that job. And so it was, and we pulled our weight. Not to say the transit didn't, but it was an issue also about pay, which I think to me was the greatest disservice that they could. How does an ESU cop not get at least detective pay or something when we first went in there? We lost so much as housing, by the way, when the merge happened, because we were supposed to get our shields. We were supposed to, I didn't want to get into how much monetarily we lost, and as far as the different, perks that we had, having it we had the federal and state and the city funding us. The Housing Authority was the only agency at the time in the black. There was a profit, so.
That went away, unfortunately.
That went away when dealing with the city. So, but again, that was completely out of line that the emergency service cops were not paid more. And that's a legitimate gripe. I was like, hey, I can't argue with you. I was like, yeah, I get the same thing you're getting, buddy. Don't bite my head off.
No, that's that's what Pete Conlon was talking about. Pete Conlon was just on the show, like I was telling you, and that was his thing. It's the reason why he ended up leaving emergency in '96 and going to OCCB. Which if you want to hear that, you can go back and watch that interview for those of you in the audience. But it was kind of unique because when you guys first merged unofficially, I mean ERU into ESU, you guys were still wearing the housing uniforms until May of '95 when you all switched formally into the.
It's interesting because I was in the ceremony unit with housing, and I was on that day when we had a sort of like retire the housing flag. You had to go to one police plaza. Transit and housing officially had to retire the department flags at one police plaza, and they were put in a museum or whatever. And that was the day it was officially. You took off the housing patch, and you put the NYPD stuff on. But that was yeah, I felt like the Japanese on the Missouri, but but no, I'm joking. But it was solemn. Like, oh gosh, the housing is gone. And don't get me wrong, I love being a housing cop, but I think I was very lucky coming into emergency services, blessed actually. Given everything that's happened, I have no regrets.
I think this is when you were in housing ceremony. This was an MOS funeral. Who was this for?
I believe that was John Williamson.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
He was killed when some savage threw a giant buckle of spackle off a roof and crushed him.
Him in the head.
Yeah, and I came out of the academy with John, worked at PSA 6 with him. And that's a really hard job to do just in general. I mean, it's always been like a sense of pride to do it for like a retiree and, for the families, it's great. But when you do a line of duty, the guy. I ended up knowing two of the carries that we did, and it sucks. It's not a good experience. I mean, it's an honor to do it right and to uphold them, and you're doing it for the families. But it was really tough to do that job. I mean, that was straight out of the police academy. The ceremony unit grabbed me because the guy who runs the ceremony unit was also working at the police academy, and he wanted big guys who had brand new uniforms, and you couldn't get guys to volunteer for that. It was a nice little gig.
Because I was gonna say, that's the thing about having a small department. The LODDs hit you harder than they would, with the big.
Absolutely, you pretty much know everybody.
Yeah.
At one point or another, you come across them.
Because when you got on, that was 92. Heidelberger gets killed. Latanzio knew him.
Paul Heidelberg was in the ceremony unit. Yeah. I knew him from the ceremony unit. And this is a little fact that we used to practice the carries, with the coffins. You have to practice with that, and we would take turns laying in the coffin, and doing that. And it's like surreal because Paulie was one of our guys, and it's like now it's for real. Yeah, Paulie was killed on Bayside, Queens.
Breaking up a fight.
I remember the perp, Patrick Bannon. That was a piece of garbage. That guy. It was an execution. There was no need for it. But Paulie was a nice guy. Really, really nice guy.
One of the guys.
Always the nice guys.
One of the guys, exactly. That's a perfect point. One of the guys in the chat, is Scott Wagner. He was a detective in housing. He worked major case and homicide. He worked that particular case, the Heidelberg case. He remembers it, and it was Paul's friend too. They were literally just being the peacekeepers. And I think the guy was on steroids, and he was
he was a roid rage. Yeah, that's what they said. Yeah.
And he came and did that. So it was Paul in 92. Rudy Thomas, remember Rudy Thomas?
Rudy Thomas, also out of my academy class. He was killed for his motorcycle over on Pennsylvania Avenue, I believe. Yep.
And then the last one was Freddie Bosch, died of a heart attack on a raid in 95, right before the merger.
Yeah. Right. That one I wasn't in that one because I was in emergency, I think, at the time.
Yeah. So. The unofficial merger had already happened. I have another photo here. It's you on a bridge. This is before that you went into ESU. I think you were still in ERU at this point, or you could tell me. But this is a great bridge shot.
Yeah, that's the Verrazano. That's the Verrazano Bridge. Yeah, that's the old the housing rescue shirt.
Yep, that's what I'm like. It's probably before the absorption, I imagine.
Yeah. That was pretty cool. I love the bridge kinds. And little disclosure here. I used to be afraid of heights.
You have to get rid of that before you go to ESU.
You know what? It wasn't as bad. It's like my motto was that if it's high enough that I could get, I'd die from the fall, that I wasn't afraid of it. It was just like the ladders and stuff. You fall, it's going to hurt. Right. Falling off a bridge, you're going to die. I'm not going to feel it. But I got over it like anything else.
Of course. And then the air, to your point earlier, you mentioned the air sea rescue, and here you are. I think this is you, right? The helicopter.
I think that might be me or my partner, one of those two. But they got tons of photos. I don't know. But that's yeah, Aviation 14. I used to love doing that. Had some great pilots too. We had John O'Hara, who was Truck 3, who was in the big Larry Davis shootout. He
Yep.
actually saved my life after my shooting, and
Mm.
that's another story. But he'll tell you that a little later.
Yep.
But we have similar injuries, and his phone call really put everything in perspective for me when I was going through a bad time. And then I remember the other pilot was Gunther. This guy was a madman. Great guy. He recently passed away, I heard.
Mm.
And he took me and Rodell on a ride. Oh gosh, I mean the guy was like a Vietnam vet pilot, so I'll tell you, he did some stuff that was like wow. And we are standing on the skids the whole time. Took us up to Camp Smith from Floyd Bennett Field one time. What a ride!
Right.
But you have to have trust in these guys, and those two pilots. There are plenty of great pilots in aviation, but those two guys stood out as just like wow. Those are great guys, and you felt comfortable. Even though heights might make you a little squeamish. Uh, just rarely ever got to sit inside the damn thing. It was always I was always outside the skid or something. And I was like, come on, you know.
But you get used to it
But,
after a while, I imagine.
oh yeah. No, but it was I loved it. I was like, wow, we're getting paid to ride a helicopter. This is cool.
Yeah, no, it's fun. It's what you dream of as a boy. A couple more photos before I get back to your career. Was this FEMA right here?
No, actually, that was Christmas. That's Afghanistan. It's Bagram Air Force Base. The,
Oh, okay.
the the base they put before it became a real base.
Right.
Um, I got a call from the commanding officer, emergency service, and he said, "Joe, I noticed you haven't taken any of the trips. They were giving trips to 9/11." I'm like, "No, give it to the guys that are digging. I'm working like a liaison at 1PP for the families." And he goes, "There's a trip that nobody wants to go on." And I joked around. I goes, "What, Afghanistan?" He goes, "Yeah."
Yeah.
And he goes, "Would you want to go and show your appreciation for the troops?" And I'm like, "Yeah." I didn't bat an eye to my family's cringe. And it was me and Tommy McDonald, who's Steve McDonald's brother, who's a new guy in emergency service, great guy. And then a couple, the firemen were up there, and we went to. It was an interesting trip. It was funded by the Diageo beverage company, which they handle most of the major liquor companies. And oddly enough, it's Afghanistan's a dry country.
Yeah.
And that's an illusion I-76. That's an old Russian plane. I think it was held together with duct tape. But we went to Afghanistan, and a side note to that, there's a store in the Bronx called Paul's Police Equipment, and I went there to buy a bunch of shirts to give to the troops and hats and stuff because we don't have that in the police department to give out. The fire department apparently has a haberdashery. We don't have one like that. And I was going to pay out of my own pocket, and the guy donated like a whole duffel load full of stuff for the troops. I remember that kindness, and it was great. We got to give the troops there. I think most of them were like the 10th Mountain Division. They were in Bagram, and again, it was tents back then. It wasn't. It was tent and bombed out Russian hangars. They still had some Russian planes, like they were burnt out on the runway. And we went there for Christmas, and it was an experience. Then we went to Kabul to a children's orphanage to bring the supplies and stuff. They used to be the old Russian embassy. It became an orphanage.
And then one more photo before I'll show the other ones later, of course. But one more photo
Sure.
before I get back to your career. I think was this EOD training?
Actually, yeah, we went to the bomb squad. I think this is when I was in housing.
Mm.
We went to the bomb squad, and they said try the suit on, and I was like, yeah, sure, try it out. So, we helped the bomb squad put this on.
Yep.
That's still part of the procedure, but
Yep, it is.
it's just like I'm sitting here and I'm like, man, I wonder what that feels like to be in that suit. And yeah, try it on. And it was great. I mean, I have so much respect for what they do and how they do it. And it's a something that if I was given an option, maybe I would do it. But I give those guys props. I mean, that's heavy. That's a heavy job.
It is, and a lot of the guys that are in that unit used to be in ESU. Jeff Dudo,
Yeah.
the truck they call it Truck 11. A lot of the guys
Yeah.
rolled into that unit.
Actually, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Gunther. Was that?
He says Gunther was grounded for buzzing 1PP. Jeff Dudo said that.
I thought it was because he went under a bunch of bridges doing a pursuit. I heard for clamors from the city island, and they caught him on camera going under all the bridges on the East River.
Oh boy!
I thought that's what did him in.
Oh,
but
I'll have to confirm that one, Jeff. You said one of your mentors.
One of my mentors was Tony Steph. He was a bomb squad guy. He was blown up by the FLN, and he's in the support group. And he's the one who was credited with one of the members who started the police self support group, which I'm a member of. we help other cops who've been injured in the line of duty. And he was my mentor. He's a great guy, and son's on the job. He's got his grandson's on the job now too.
Mhm.
And you talk about the bomb squad, and you hear his story. You sit there and you go, "Wow." It's a story of heroism and survival, and it's such an inspiration when you hear that story.
Yep, him and his partner. It was Richie. Him and Richie Pastorella. His son Brian went
That's
into the
right.
bomb squad later on.
Right.
Yeah, Brian's
Exactly.
been
Now,
watching for a number of years.
and now his grandson is in the police department because they got the shield. I'm trying to get my shield for my son. My son just went to the academy, so we're trying to get him my shield. But it's you see that tradition and that love for the job from guys who hey, they paid the price. They're still there. That sacrifice is forever. They're living it, and he's doing a great job. He's still giving back to the job, doing that with the police self-support group.
Yeah, and the bomb squad's been around. Just a quick side on them, since 1903. I'm trying to get down to their offices before the year is up. But if you ever go to their offices in Greenwich Village, their memorial wall, there's 6 plaques up there. So it tells you not all of them have been killed by bombs. Some guys, died in different scenarios, but nevertheless, as you said, the sacrifices there. And Jeff Dito, to your point earlier about Gunther, says that too. He was crazy, but in a good way.
Yeah, oh yeah. I know what it feels like to have trees hit my legs. The top of trees hit my legs from that helicopter. Just put it that way. He did that to me, and mind you, I'm a size 14 shoe. And that little platform they put there is not enough for 2 guys. So me and my partner got close. Really, we learned to get really close on that bird because he's ducking and just, doing some stuff. And it was a lot of fun. You're scared to death, but it was a lot of fun.
I imagine. One thing I want to ask you, I swear I'm not trying to be funny when I ask this, but I know each truck kind of has its signature job. And the reason I ask is, and again, I'm not trying to be funny. Are you guys by a mental hospital or something, 3 truck? Because you guys do get a lot of ED features.
It's funny. There used to be a psychiatric facility right off the hutch, but that was I don't think that was it. It was just we had Jacoby Hospital, which had a psych ward.
Okay.
But it's just policy, It's a 3 days in, 3 days out, and of course now you got somebody with mental illness, and this is it's sad, but you have people with mental illness, and now they're not taking their own medication, but now they're using illicit drugs, which is a really bad combination. So you got a lot of that. You got a lot of people who just zooted out to the point where I've seen a guy jump off a 5-story building, land on a pile of garbage, get up and run away. He was so hooked up. I chip on the curb, I break my neck, but they used to call it scale rule. Scale will jump, will get hit by a car, get up. They're like rubber people. And they would, yeah, we had a lot of EDPs in the Bronx, a lot of EDPs and a lot of pin jobs.
There was,
along with the gun jobs and,
of course,
the whatevers. But yeah, it was like every other job was you couldn't run to all of them. You start going in that direction, but by the time you get there, okay, well, that one's canceled, no issue. Now we start going to the other one. It was just, it was we were always rocking and rolling. That was citywide too. We were busy. The 90s, I'd say we were busy, very busy.
No, of course, especially in that area. And it's funny to your point, because a lot of these people were on PCP, because there's an old episode of Cops, not in New York, but it's in Philadelphia. The guy, these 2 highway cops ended up collaring him. It took like 6 cops to tackle him. And he was a strong guy too. On top of that, he was naked because he was hopped up on PCP, and he was trying to burglarize this guy's house. And the guy had a gun and shot him twice. He didn't care. He's like, blow my face out. And then they tackle him. He's like, I'm through, put it in the paper. But he gets up and he's like charging almost the whole block. He's got 6 cops on his back, literally. So you don't know what these people are on.
We had, this was when I was a housing cop, Mitch Green, the boxer.
Oh, he fought Tyson. Yeah.
Right, fought Tyson. Tyson broke his hand on his face. That's how tough this guy was. Well, we knew his address. It was 2688th Avenue, apartment 8J, because that's where his girlfriend was. We got a job at that project. He had to go there with 6 RMPs because it was Mitch Green. So this guy would pop up. He was angel dust. He was always dusted. So we get a job. It's in transit. They're calling for a 13. Keep them coming, central kind of thing. Like, oh wow, you're hearing keep them coming. That's like keep the cops coming. Okay, usually here to slow down. We get there, and it's Mitch Green, and he's on the tracks. We get there, he looks like a puppet because he's got all the taser strings hanging out of him. Like everybody and their mother tasered this guy, and they couldn't stop him. And we're like, just sick humor. We're like, just turn on the 3rd rail, finish the job because they were going to cut the power. But what's going to stop this guy? It was crazy when people are dusted that way.
Yeah, and he's actually, he's actually mellowed out a lot. He's cleaned up now.
I'm surprised he's still alive. I didn't even know that. I'm shocked.
He's cleaned up now. He's stone cold sober. He turned his life around.
Good, because he was really something to see.
Yeah.
And then you know that he was a professional boxer, so do you really want to get punched in the face by Mitch Green? You know, it's
No,
like, no.
and not only that, but you know what? He was a gang leader. But when he fought Tyson, this is like '86 when Tyson was Tyson, and he took
Yeah,
Tyson the full 10 rounds. He lost the fight by unanimous decision, but he took Tyson the distance, which was unheard of in
yeah,
those
yeah, I
days.
remember that. I'm a big Tyson fan.
Yeah. So, 1999, A&E, not Arson Explosion Squad for my friends in the chat, but
Yeah.
the television network, they
Hmm.
shot with you guys, and it was interesting. They did one truck. They also did 8 Truck in Brooklyn, because of
Hmm.
Maddie Lawrence and Ron Griffith were in that one. So Sergeant Gillis, and they also profiled you guys over in 3. And you guys had a
Hmm.
job where it was an elderly woman. I remember it's not on
Yeah.
YouTube. I wish it was still on.
They
And
took
you
it down.
guys,
Yeah, I saw that.
yeah, that Taru helped you guys up, but it was an elderly woman off her meds. But you guys handled the job so professionally and well. She didn't get hurt. She came to the door. It was really well
Yeah, she
done.
was
But
she
never,
was she was on with a machete too. She had like a long
yeah,
blade too. So,
yeah,
hey, that's the way it's done. I mean, if we take a lot of care, especially if someone's mostly disturbed. I mean, it's not like sometimes you get pushed into a corner where sometimes you have to bring that level of force up. But that's what they call emergency services. They're not there to take them out. We're here to let's take this person into custody
yeah.
and get them help. And yeah, sometimes you take it's a difficult job. I remember the hostage negotiator. Oh gosh, I forgot his name. Great guy. Um, it'll come back to me. But I love working with him. And then it was kind of poetic that the gentleman Jack Camber became the
Oh, yeah.
hostage guy afterwards, because that's the kind of temperament. And I love both those guys. I think it was Huey. I forget his name, so I'm so sorry.
Hugh McGowan.
But McGowan, yes, great guy. And it's how you handle a job. There is no rush, especially when inside a building. It's not like you're talking to an EDP. I remember we had one on the George Washington Bridge, and it's getting to the point where like traffic is now backed up from here to Georgia. It's like either get off the pot, so to speak.
Right.
But this an elderly lady. Obviously, she was confused. It might have been because
She was off.
she
Yeah.
was off her meds or diabetic or so forth and so on. And the job was done correctly. And that's the way that was textbook. That's the way the job is supposed to get done. And it's not saying that it's unique to 3 Truck. It's just unique to emergency service. And I'm going to say it's unique to the nation by ESU. We led the way when it comes to dealing with EDPs and so forth.
I would say.
I mean, and that's not bragging. That's just that's a fact.
Mhm.
It's especially in that time we were good at it. We're really good at it. It was just a team effort.
You do enough of them, it comes down to being a science after a while. And that, as you said, with that job, I remember watching that documentary. I watched it like twice. I haven't seen it in a while, but she was scared. It wasn't that she was even belligerent or violent. She was just really scared. I remember.
Yeah, and I pointed that out in that when they interviewed me. It's like we're scary to look at. I mean, not because of bad looks, but
I remember you saying that. Yeah.
we're going up there with a helmet. We have a heavy vest. We have all these tools on us, and we look like a bunch of silverback gorillas coming at you. And you're afraid of little old lady. Oh my God. We use that to our advantage with certain perps. Like I used to sell extractions in the station house. We used to get dressed in front of them, and we're like, we're not here to talk anymore. We're here to get you into that ambulance. How you get there, you give that person, like I said, you give a person an out.
Mhm.
You could go in there like an animal, and we're gonna do everything fair and unfair to put you in there. And we would just test out the equipment in front of him, taser, hit the nightstick on the table a couple times, make sure that's nice and solid, and then scare the hell out of them. Where you see a bunch of guys dressed up in a heavy vest, helmet, and the average guy is over 6 feet.
Mhm.
You're gonna think twice about like, okay, am I gonna keep talking, or are you gonna go like a gentleman? Get carried out and wrap you up in an EDP bag, like a taco, going into the back of an ambulance face first. And it is what it is. And that's one way of handling the job. Sometimes you use that intimidation, to your advantage.
Yeah, it's a
As opposed to
psychological game.
absolutely. If I could talk somebody down without having to put my hands on you, that's great. If I have to put my hands on you, you're gonna wish you died as a child, because that's we're talking about where we're with.
Yeah.
It's the job's got to get done. We're not looking to harm anybody. But that being said, you might feel a little pain fighting, emergency service cops. It's just, it is what it is.
Play stupid games, win stupid prizes, is the old saying
Yeah,
goes.
absolutely. Yeah, you can hit the jackpot with us sometimes.
And the thing about it, before I get to, because I remember Dave Martinez, I'm going to show a couple more photos in a moment, telling me this when I was doing the show on the job in
Great
Brooklyn in
guy.
1997. Great guy. Him and Joe Dolan, of course, on that job amongst a
Yes,
slew of
no,
others.
another. These are all, like I said, these are guys that it was a freaking honor and privilege to know and work alongside them, because these guys, you talk about great guys. You don't. I'm sorry, I don't see that caliber anymore.
Yeah,
You know?
no, it's tough to come by because so much
Yeah.
has changed. But these guys were the real deal. And I remember Davey telling me, he's like, you know what? The benefit of working a lot of these jobs is that most of these guys, they don't want to, they don't want to die. They don't want to die. People
Yeah.
that you're dealing with. I mean, yeah, of course they're psyched out in the beginning, but most people are afraid of the concept of dying. So you could use that
Mm.
to your advantage because naturally, like you said, you don't want to hurt them. You don't, unless they give you a valid reason to, of course.
Yeah.
And then once you do that, it becomes a lot easier because at your core, who wants to go to an early grave? Who wants to go to a grave? Period. Nobody.
All
You
right.
know. In most instances. So a few more photos here, of course. I think this was also one of the trips that you took overseas, right? I imagine.
Yeah, that's in Bagram also.
Okay. Yeah. Good
That was in
shot there.
Bagram. Yeah, that's
And
the
then
trailer. This was actually
oh,
the one you went back. There's Camp Smith. We were training. In fact, if you go back to that photo of Camp Smith, um,
which one? This one?
no, the one you showed before,
Oh, okay.
that one. Yeah. Yeah, this is actually Vinny Dance standing next to me. I'm all the way over to, I guess it would be my left.
Mhm.
That's Vinny Dance, who was killed in 9/11.
Yeah, I don't.
And
Let me see
that's
if I
a
see him.
he's the short one standing in front of the really big guy with
Oh, okay.
porn,
Yep, I
with
see
the
him.
porn stash. That's me.
That.
And yeah, he was the original housing. I mean, great guy, great guys.
Yeah.
We enjoyed the cigars. Uh, but yeah, that group right there is a great group of guys there. Kevin Morrison. I think that's Vic Holyfield back there.
Yep.
This might have been, yeah, maybe Camp Smith or maybe the A team. And then my partner Rodell Glover, and then there's J.R. Garcia, another great supervisor. And Pete Segretti, I mean, this guy is like a gun guru. I mean, he's so knowledgeable, sniper guy. I mean, one of the best. And then there's his partner, I believe, that might be. I don't know if that's Vasquez. It might have been his partner. I'm not sure who that is. I'm all the way at the
This
end.
is Morrison.
No, Morrison's the one standing next to Dance.
Okay.
Two
All
big
right.
guys. I'm all the way. Yeah.
All right.
So I
Right.
don't know if this is a job or where this is at. I'm not. I
It
don't know
says Camp Smith, 1999.
Oh, so it's okay. Okay, so maybe that's what it
To your
is.
point. Yeah.
Makes sense.
Yep. And then there's this one.
Yeah, this is in front of the truck. This was the first squad back in the day. And I'm all the way in the back, and then there's Rodell Glover, Morrison again, Timmy Van Schultz, Al Rosenthal, who was my field training officer longest, and there's Dale Schultz, and this is Sergeant Wall, and I think that was a new guy, Tahada. I think his name was Tahada. I'm not sure. He didn't last too long. In emergency, but yeah, that was a squad one photo back in the day.
And then this is rope training, I imagine.
Yeah, this is hanging off Aviation 14 at Camp Smith. That's the soccer field.
And then this one, I remember Vic Holyfield showing this in the ABC News documentary that did on ESU, well, on the NYPD as a whole, but partially ESU in 2002. This is like running in a counter assault drill, right?
Yeah, this is a tubular assault of a bus. Same
Okay.
technique could be used on a train, or it's just tubular assault. I'm actually all the way at the end on the left there, holding an MP5.
Okay, I see it. Yep.
Yeah, and then actually I think that's again Vinny Dance is going through the window, and it's Kevin Morrison and Manny Hernandez. I see with his back to us. Who's one of the instructors. It's a great training, So there's a couple of distraction devices going off in the background.
Yep.
It's pretty cool. Again, I love training. I think it's like the best thing you can do. It builds up your confidence in your abilities. That's where you want to screw up, so that way you learn what you did wrong. You don't want to do it in the street.
Exactly. No, well said. That said, I guess, I did say earlier that most people don't want to die. That's why I said most, because, there was this job in 2000 in Brooklyn. And I first found out about it talking with Joe Dolan. And then I looked it up and I'm like, wow, holy crap. It's this guy, for context, you guys don't, as we talked about tonight, you guys just don't go in there like it's the OK Corral. If you're going to shoot back at somebody, it's the absolute last resort. And this guy left you no choice. So the way the job ended up, and then I'll let you take it from how it started, it was you who was shot, not only you, but obviously also Jack Griffith, who I think was a sergeant, Greg John, and I forget the other officer.
No, I got it
he
wrong.
was.
No, he wasn't shot. It was.
I thought he was. My bad.
No, it was. My first one to get shot was Gregory John.
Greg John. I know he was shot.
Great guy. The initial job came over as an EDP. Family went over to the station house and said that their son, who was 47-year-old, was just going bonkers, whatever. They failed to tell the sergeant there that he was also. They just bought him 2 new guns, a Mini 14 and a shotgun, to his collection, which is whatever. And then Gregory John approached the location, and he was shot from a window. And then, of course, the job snowballed into, everybody and their mother's coming. I'm coming all the way from the Bronx because I had done a tour change because I have a set of 1-year-old twins at home. So I was just changing tours because my wife had to work her tour. And it was at the end of the day tour when this job happened. And I remember Manny Hernandez coming up to me. He was just one of our accomplished sniper guys. And he says, come on, get in the car. I need an observer. And I'm like, all right, cool. We're going to go. And you don't have to tell us twice. You shot an ESU cop. We're all going. So that's how I ended up at that job. And then it's a term that we use. It's like hurry up and wait, because now you gotta let everything come into place. You're gonna try to negotiate them out. You got to find out first, what's the situation. You got to clear the neighborhood. There's so much that goes on to a big job like that. This is a barricaded, perp who just shot a police officer. We all know anybody crazy enough to shoot a cop is a bigger danger to anybody else. It is what it is. So we did pretty much surround the location, tried probing the location with, taking out the windows, just look inside, didn't answer. This went on for pretty much almost 8 hours. No, I'm gonna say more like 6 hours, whatever. It was from 3 to like 8. And then the decision was made to, penetrate the location, and they went in. He wasn't home. I think they found a couple of dead dogs in the location and an arsenal, knives, guns, the whole nine. So now there what's known as an area search of the houses that were evacuated. The houses surrounded the location. Yeah. Mind you, this is in the middle of a nor'easter. The power was out of the neighborhood. There was flash flooding, rain. It was a really bad weather day. So we checked everything that was open, whether it be a garbage can, a door. So we went. I think we did 10 houses, different teams, fanned out backyards, and I was going around the corner with a team, and we ended up just checking open doors, and the canine officer, she found an open door. And again, this is one of my big things about complacency will get you killed on this job. Okay, you can never. Yes, this is a long time. This guy could have been in Jersey by now. He's could be long gone. But you don't let your guard down. She was about to open that door when I stopped her. I said, no, let's do this right. Let's line up. I'm the bunker guy. And we did it the right way. Popped the door. It was open anyway. We have to introduce ourselves. The bunker I had no light on it, and I was using my Glock 19, which didn't have a light on it. So I'm looking down this dark hallway, and it's more like a dark hallway, and then there's like a little opening here. So you know it's splitting your bunker. You're covering that empty spot with your gun, and you're covering the unknown with your bunker. Take a couple of steps in, and a shot rings out, and it hits the bunker. It's right on the corner of the bunker. Now, contrary to what people think, the bunker is manual. It does move. So I was shot at with a Mossberg 500 12 gauge shotgun, and it had the 00 buck, which is 32 caliber bullets. 9 come out at a time. So 7 hit the bunker, and 2 hit me. One took the tip of my nose off, and one hit me right in the eye socket, which luckily for me, it's one of the hardest bones, and I was able to crack that eye socket. Now, the rest of the bullets hit the bunker, and back then we didn't have what's known as anti-spalling. It's like a mixture they put on. So the fragments, the bullet fragments shattered and then rode the bunker because the bunker moves. So that went into my face. So I had bullet fragments in both my eyes and in my face. Tons. I think I sent you a photo of the x-ray.
I'm going to show it momentarily.
So on instinct, again, this is when we talk about training, because I'm no superhero. It's just muscle memory and reflex. And we're taught from day in, day out that you penetrate the location no matter what. My job is to stop the rounds. Did I know I got, my bell rung? Absolutely not. I mean, for all I knew, Mike Tyson just punched me, yeah. So it's funny because it's the term we used to joke about. It's like, everybody has a plan till you get punched in the face. Now I know what that feels like. So instinctively, my legs went forward, and I'm literally just pulling, I'm shooting down range, thinking I'm shooting down range. Didn't realize that the bullet, and I still have my department issue Glock 19 that has a scrape across it where a bullet shot out of my hand. So I'm still pulling the trigger, going forward. Another round comes, boom, hits the bunker dead on. So it's like somebody with a sledgehammer taking a running start and hitting you on the sledgehammer. Again, it's a narrow hallway, and I'm a big guy. For some reason, I guess his view is to the light coming outside, which is EMS vehicles, because where we found this guy was where EMS was staged, like the safe area. So all you saw was the occasional lights of the EMS, vehicles. So third shot misses me completely. It's the wall, all 9 shots. Fourth shot again hits the bunker, boom, right on top. And I'm not knowing this because I'm blind. I'm just going on muscle memory. I'm just going forward. I'm literally on top of the guy, not knowing it. So he puts the shotgun to my leg and fires. And luckily, I had my gas mask strapped to my leg, on my left leg. And the gas mask has like a little Kevlar net that comes over when you put it on. It's like the same Scott pack that you see on the firemen use. And that stopped some of the rounds. So 5 penetrated my leg right to the bone. And I finally went down. And then I remember trying really hard not to lose consciousness. And I could hear this guy like in a panic just walking around. And I'm literally like reaching, I'm old school Bronx boy. I'm reaching for, I had a buck knife. I'm like, I'm going to stab this guy. If he gets near me. Because I thought he was going to finish me off. I didn't hear him load the gun though. That's why I was like, okay, this guy, I could literally like smell this guy, even though like, the tip of my nose was avulsed. And then he ran into the back. And then I had a little experience. My grandfather came to me in a vision and told me, you want to live, want to die? And I was like, yeah, I want to live. So I had gotten on the radio and I said, listen, guys, I'm down. Can someone get me? Now, meanwhile, there's a gun battle going on now in the backyard. Now I'm hearing shots. And at the time, it was Santos Valentines, God rest his soul. He was killed on 9/11. He recognized my voice and he's like, hey, Big Joe is down. Big Joe is down. And apparently that's when, a bunch of guys came in to rescue me and drag me out of there. What I didn't know behind me was that one of the rounds ricocheted off my bunker and hit Jimmy McGrath right between the eyes. Luckily, it didn't penetrate his skull, but it ripped him open. So, and then Billy Madigan saved him. And then Billy Madigan came back with, I think it was like Vic Holyfield and a bunch of other guys, and they came, they pulled me out from what I was told. I can't say what happened behind me because I wasn't there. I do know that I had a new guy behind me, and this is again when I talk about training, and it's not a popular thing. He ran. He should have never been in emergency service. He had a Mini 14 because I remember ducking, thinking that the Mini 14 is going to go off, and it never did. And that's where Jimmy stepped up, and then Jimmy got tagged because the kid pushed past everybody. And the same thing with the Sergeant Griffin. He ran across the street, apparently. So, this is the thing about this job is that this job is not for everybody. And they're not all perfect. But some people just are not made to be in this unit. And it pains me to say that, but it's the truth, and that's how we learn.
Yeah.
So, then the whole rescue afterwards, now they're working on me, and I could feel the raindrops falling into my face because it's raining. And apparently somebody let a round almost hit me. It turned out that it was, again, Sergeant Griff let a round go and almost hit me, so they took his gun away. And they could put me into an R&P because I'm a big guy, and it was, what's his name? Big Asian guy. I love this guy. He's not so bad with names. It'll come to me. Dave Kale. He's real knowledgeable. I think he's a PA actually now in medicine. He put me in the back of an ambulance because a bunch of guys from crime scene detectives broke into an ambulance that was abandoned by EMS because they ran when the shots rang out. And mind you, there's a gun battle going on in the backyard.
Yeah, them I don't blame.
Yeah. And I don't blame them at all. So they broke into the ambulance and put me in the ambulance, and they're driving me to Kings County Hospital, even though Coney Island Hospital is right across the street. But that's not a trauma center you want to go to. So I don't even know it's a trauma center. They're just like, hey, we're taking you to Kings County because that's where apparently the best surgeons are, and they were right. I'm not a Brooklyn guy, so I don't know anything about Brooklyn. And you try to find humor in everything, and KO is talking to me. He's patching me up and stuff. And he's like, Joe, you're gonna be okay. You're gonna be okay. And he has like a weird accent. I don't know what it is, but it's just, he's a funny guy. I love this guy. And he's talking to me like, you're gonna be fine. Meanwhile, he didn't realize he's leading into me, and his radio is right by my ear. So I'm hearing that. Start off the blood bank. Officers likely. I'm like, I'm telling Dave, you're lying to me. They're telling me I'm gonna die. It's okay. I'm reassuring him like it's okay. He's like, no, don't listen to that. Whatever. It was just that whole ride. And at one point that they had to tell highway to slow it down because that ambulance became airborne. They hit a pothole or something, and I could just feel that boom, and I'm bouncing the back of that bus. I mean, those guys are trying to, they're doing their thing to get me to the ambulance. And I have to get me to the hospital. And interesting stuff goes on. Being on that side of the fence, because I've always been at the other side where, and it's one of the sucky parts of being a ESU cop is you see, the whole routine when officers get shot. Don't get me wrong. We all go out of our way to make sure this cop makes it. This is family here, and now I'm not the receiving end of that. I'm the one usually saving the day, and now the guys are saving me. And it was just like there was this calmness that came over me. Like I wasn't worried about anything. I guess because I was still in La La Land. I just got my bell rung, so I was just like, it was just weird how calm I was. In fact, at the time was Chief Dunn, a great guy, by the way. He's talking, and they're trying to figure out if they can land a helicopter on my property where I live, because they want to get next of kin, get the wife. And they thought I was unconscious the whole time. I'm just laying there, just they're working on me, doing whatever, taking my clothes off and checking me for holes. At one point, they check my butt. I'm like, hey, dude, that hole came with me. It's like that. And the whole ER started laughing. I'm like, buy me a drink or something first, before you do that. They're like, yeah, dude, oh, sorry, we have to check. I'm like, okay, whatever. And that's when Dunn to me goes, you're conscious? And I'm like, yeah, what's up? Because again, I'm swollen and now, I'm ugly to look at. And it's like, yeah, you could definitely land a helicopter in my backyard, but she ain't getting in that helicopter. I'll tell you that right now. It's not happening. You could go to, there's a hospital nearby that has a helipad too, and it's like they ain't getting in a helicopter, so don't even try that. So, but that was pretty much it. And of course, now they put me out. They had to induce a coma to reduce the damage to my eyes, and I had total out of the whole year, I had 23 surgeries.
Jeez.
To repair damage, including the fully detached retina, partially detached retina, a ton of little invasive stuff to remove debris my entire face. I had bullets in my gum line. They say I have the hardest teeth ever because they were scraping lead off my teeth. I didn't lose a single tooth. I never had a cavity in my life either, so that's I guess it's a genetic thing. My father, my grandfather, never lost a tooth. And they had to do all different sections. I remember. Ray Ruiz from Three Truck, great guy. Good guys. He was one of the guys that used to drive me to my appointments, and he was like saying, "No, they're filleting you," because he would sit there and watch the procedure. And it's like, dude, they were like filleting you like a fish. It was interesting, and it turned out that my oral surgeon was the same oral surgeon for the New York Yankees. So every day, mind you, I wasn't a Yankee fan; I'm a Mets fan, and
all right, this podcast is over. I'm kidding.
It's funny because I grew up right next to Yankee Stadium. I used to love them in the 70s. After the first strike, I'm like, eh. Then I moved to Flushing. But anyway, that being said, every day is a new Yankee in there. So I ended up getting all this Yankee memorabilia, and I gave it to my brother. He's a big diehard Yankee fan. Like Derek Jeter would come in, Joe Torre, whatever. And it was interesting, that whole thing. But the only horrible part about the shooting is that you do go through an emotional toll, you post-traumatic stress, and then my biggest concern, and I asked, I said, did anybody die behind me? And they said no, and they said I broke down because that was the most important thing to me, that nobody died. I did what I had to do, and I still get emotional about it.
Understandably, Lutanzio put in the chat was Joe Ocasio.
Joe Ocasio
was also shot in that. I know Joe told me he was shot. He's gonna be on the show.
Yeah, it was me, Gregory John, Joe Ocasio, and Gene McGrath who officially shot, because I had gotten the crime scene, the whole crime scene folder, and it showed the guys who got shot that night, and it was that was it. There was those were the guys that were officially had gunshot wounds.
Oh, okay. Because I remember reading the Daily News that that's the reason why.
Yeah, there was some
Griffith earlier.
And stuff. Again, I don't listen. I was too busy doing what I had to do to go on, know what's going on.
Right.
Also, but I know there was a lot of heroism that night, a lot of good guys. And again, I don't want to, there was a stink because of what a couple of guys did. But the rest of the unit, let me tell you, a lot of guys, all those guys that got combat crosses and the guys who got the MOH Medal of Honor and stuff, those guys, I mean, that's ESU. That's and then there's some guys, like, and I like to point out a guy named Vinny Vanko, who, a great guy, young guy. He didn't put in for a medal, or he was missed or whatever. And I asked him, I says, dude, but I remember you there. And he goes, yeah, I was there. He goes, I don't think I should get a medal for saving, my brother's life. And that's so, that's so on
That's an E-man. That is an E-man.
Yeah, that's an E-man. And I'm like, nah, but you should get recognition for what you did too. It's like, but I get what he's saying. I've never actually ever put in for a medal. It's always been put in a write up, but I never, that was another thing. You have to put in for your own medals. So I thought that was kind of weird.
Yeah.
But I
I
lucked
get
out.
why
I had
guys don't.
sergeants that, yeah, I got like guys who walk around with like 1,000 medals and stuff, like 1,000 EPDs. Like, really, guy, you putting in for every? No, that's just weird. I don't know. That's a different thing. But the medals that I've gotten from some sergeants. Hey, you won that job. I'm writing you guys up, kind of thing. I was like, cool. I don't, I always tell people I did 12 years, and I like a line from an Indiana Jones movie. It's not the years, it's the mileage. I got a lot of miles out of that 12 years in emergency. Yeah, there've been other jobs. That was the last. That was I thought was going to be the last job for me, and then there was 9/11.
When did you get down to that?
First day. I was scheduled to be at one police plaza on 9/11 at 9 o'clock in the morning to get my photo taken for Medal Day, which was scheduled for September 26th. And I had to cancel and tell them, can I come a little earlier another day? Because again, I was because of the kids. There was nobody home to be with the kids. And the guy said, no problem, come. So I came in a couple of days earlier. And then I saw the job on TV, and I remember calling the desk. I think it was Tina Guerrero was on the desk, and I was like, "Where do you want me?" And she's like, I said, "Where do you want me?" She was like concerned because I was, I still had a bunch of stitches inside my gum line, and they had just done some work on me. And she goes, "Oh my God," I said, "Where do you need me? You want me at a truck? I'll triage. This is gonna get bad. This is before the towers even came down. I saw the second plane, and I called." And she goes, "Well, just go to the truck. Go to the truck and go on standby." I was like, "All right." So I ended up fielding a lot of phone calls, worried family members. We know everybody. And this was going on the whole night. And the numbers weren't in. We had a whole bunch of people missing first. And then slowly people were turning up. Some guys ended up going to New Jersey. Some people just didn't get a chance to check in because, communications were down. And the list dwindled down to, that 14. And then they decided to bring them down to the family center, which they created a family center at one police plaza, the auditorium. And then since I had built a rapport with the people from 3 Truck, because I was like the voice, and I had asked, can I go down there and help out somewhere? Because they wouldn't let me go into the site because I'm half blind, and I got procedures and stuff. So, and my equilibrium was still off a year later. They said that's a great idea. Go be with the families, because unfortunately it was the bulk of it was ESU, which is a testament to the unit, So he got to know all the family members, and I was the liaison, because the one thing we don't do is we don't BS our family members in the situation. And that was the thing that, and retired guys showed up, was Manny Hernandez and JR Garcia. They started calling us the 3 amigos because we showed up, we kept it real, we let people know. And that was a really rough time going from a rescue to then, making that call that it's going to become a recovery. And I remember that day when they had to make that announcement. That was really, really rough. That was a really rough experience. And just on the daily. I mean, I would go home maybe like for 2 hours and then come back. And I know the guys that were down there they were digging for their lives. These guys wanted to find guys, man. He wanted to find out people. And, I can't see anybody wanting to sit back on the sidelines on that one. You got to help out in some way. And for the most part, the entire unit and so many retired guys came back. Which I thought was, that's wow. It's a testament to the unit, to the heritage of the unit, to the people. It was just like, hey, everybody's doing something. Yeah. And that went. In fact, my retirement was the day they closed Ground Zero. That day I retired.
May of 2002. Al Baker was telling me he was there the next day. Al Baker had been retired like almost a dozen years by that
Yeah.
time.
Oh, yeah. And it's that thing. It's like guys like I talk about, Manny Hernandez and JR Garcia had retired a couple of weeks before or whatever. The last time we saw all the guys was at their retirement party up in the Bronx. And I remember seeing Santos Valentin and the rest of the guys that were, been around emergency forever.
Right.
So that was real rough. That's to this day. It doesn't feel like it's 20 plus years.
About to be 21. My God.
Yeah. So you sit there and, but it was, it was really rough, especially when they found remains and so forth. It was just really, you kept your composure. You had to be that guy or that gal But then there's moments when you have those little moments of, you're standing in front of your, staring at your fish tank, or just, playing with your dog, that it gets to you. And a lot of guys have had issues with it. And I mean, I was going through my own post-traumatic stress from the shooting, and pretty much put that on hold. Because that's where I talk about John O'Hara made a phone call because he had similar injuries. He got shotgunned in the face by Larry Davis and lost his eye. And I don't want to get so somber, but some of the funny things about emergencies, the dark humor, because John was like, they used to call him the eye in the sky. Because he was probably only one eye, can only make right turns. Then I became the dead eye knight because so yeah, you have to find some humor in everything because hey, you're alive, you're here,
Right, of course,
So,
and that's the most important thing. And I do have some of the extra photos that you sent me. I mean, here's the first one. You can see some of the fragments.
yeah,
And
and they're
then,
pretty big fragments. It's 32 caliber split in half, and they went in. And that's ricochets.
yeah. And then this one gives you kind of the frontal view
Yeah.
of what happened. And then there's the photo with you playing with your son. I think this encapsulates perfectly what happened. The extent of the injuries. You could see it right then and there. That's during the early stages.
Yeah. It took a while for my son to sit on my lap because he thought I was a monster. He just couldn't recognize me, and I had to slowly talk him down.
Yeah.
And then he wouldn't leave my side. He would not leave my side. It was just his brother and sister were twins. They were 1 year old, but he's I think 3 in this photo, 4. So
and the news
it was rough
coverage
on
of
him.
it. His Daily News
Yeah.
has the photo from the very next day, Sunday, August 13th, 2000.
Yep.
Of from that job. So, I guess I'll ask you before I get to the concluding segment is, you've been retired a long time now, about 20 years, and you've gotten to do a lot. You were telling me that you were a bodyguard for a while. I got a couple of photos here just briefly that I'll show of you with certain celebrities. There's you with Steve Sciarippa, for example. Steve and the late Tony Sirico just passed away. This is you and the great Mariano Rivera as well. So a lot of cool things. But like you said earlier, you got a lot of mileage out of those 12 years. When you look back, despite all the sadness, between housing and obviously the NYPD, if you could sum up your career in one sentence, I guess in that one sentence, tell me what you're proudest of.
What I'm proudest of, that I made a difference.
Mm.
I always like to say I wasn't the best guy out there, but I got the job done, and that's all. And I remember that was taught to me. Got to get the job done. That's what emergency is about. You get the job done. No accolades. No, we don't high five or anything like that. Back in the day, anyway.
Mm.
We just hey, get the job done. Go back to the table of knowledge and then break each other's shoes, and just have that 18th cup of coffee, and just hang out there at the command. And there was a lot of camaraderie, a lot of fun stuff too. I mean, that's why when the 9/11 happened, it hit us hard because there was a lot of great guys that were taken there, and what a way to it was just the emergency was like the best. I had the best time as an ESU cop. So it was just a lot of fun, and a lot of heavy duty stuff, but for the most part, a lot of fun.
It is now time for the rapid fire. It's the concluding segment of the show. 5 hit run questions from me, 5 hit run answers from you. You can say pass if you want. Are you ready?
Sure.
All right. First, funniest call you ever responded to?
Funniest call that I ever responded to was we got a job, came over as a tiger on the Bronx River Parkway. Assumed it was escaping from the Bronx Zoo. So we were like, wow, it's urban safari time, right? So we go into this job, and somebody goes, oh, cancel. It's just a duck. How did a duck turn into a tiger on dispatch? Is like, we're like, really? Did you misspell duck? Was it? I mean, what the. So and that to me, that was the funniest job. But I mean, that's the funniest call I ever had. If you ask me what's the funniest job I've been on, it's kind of like dark humor.
That's
We
fine.
had a job. It was a barricaded, and the guy was a bad guy, and he's needless to say, he ended up killing his wife, stabbing his wife. So we take the door, and he's putting up a fight. And I remember I was working with Tommy Santisi, and Tommy was listening. He knows the story because to this day we still get a good chuckle out of it. It's dog pile on the rabbit, and this guy's like a slippery guy, and we're just trying to, get the cuffs on him, and he's fighting us. And it's hard to fight somebody when you have the heavy vest and helmet on, and you're slinging your rifle, and you're doing what you got to do. So Tommy's trying to get his legs, and all of a sudden, the leg comes off. It's a prosthesis. So you get that moment where me and Tommy looking at you because he was working with me that day. He flew a 2-3 truck, and I'm looking at him, and he looked at me. He's like, oh well, and he starts beating the guy with his own leg. I mean, you can't make this stuff up. So I mean, to this day, and I'm like, okay, that's one way of doing it, but it was, and it worked, So unfortunately, yeah, it's dark because the whole scenario was horrible, blood everywhere. But Tommy just had that moment of pause. He's got a guy's prosthesis, and he starts to beat the guy with it. I mean, and you sit there and we talk about that, and I was like, yeah, that's something you don't see every day. Get back in the car and just do what we got to do. But to me, that for some reason that I love Tommy. Tommy's like one of the funniest guys I ever worked with. I love working with Tommy. He is a great guy, 10 truck guy. Those guys at 10 truck were freaking phenomenal. And especially first squad, it was a funny bunch of guys, and I just that one stands out as a job that just that in the middle of all this chaos, there's this pause where he has a leg and he's like, oh well, and he just he start going at it, and I just like, wow, dude, it was really. I remember that like it was yesterday. I was at Evergreen Houses. It was just, oh my gosh, that one stood out.
That's one of the best. That's one of the best rapid fire answers I think I've heard. That's a top 5 one. That's an instant classic. Prosthetic leg and a beatdown that followed. That's only the first question I asked you, for crying out loud. Second most uplifting call you ever responded to.
Oh geez, uplifting call. Yeah, there are a lot. I mean, me and my partner saved a 14-year-old girl who was about to jump from Co-op City. And it was the way we did it. I mean, this girl was upset because she had failed a math exam. And she was it was just weird. And she was sitting on the ledge of her balcony. And the balconies had that I don't know if you know Co-op City, they have these cement railings. And it's kind of, and she's literally just one butt cheek on that. She could easily have just slipped. And we're trying to talk to her, and she's making no sense, obviously, because she's obviously just had she's having some sort of critical incident in her head. And we noticed that she kept taking her glasses off because it was also raining, which is nothing. We were afraid she was going to slip off. And I know we were 20 stories up. Nobody wants to see a little kid die. And she kept taking the glasses off and wiping them and putting them back on while we're talking to her. And came up with the idea. I just turned around and said, like, she wasn't looking over here. I said, ma'am, can you please just go back into your window while she took her glasses off? This is none of your business. So when she turned to look, we grabbed her and pulled her in because we just distracted her just enough to and she's obviously with her glasses, she can't really see apparently. So when she went to focus on the distraction that wasn't there, me and my partner grabbed her and brought her in. And it was just like, thank God we got this kid off this ledge. She was having a panic attack. And it was just the weirdest one I ever had. We had other people kill them to try to commit suicide for, different reasons. I remember one guy he was a regular. This gentleman was a deaf mute. And he was always, anytime he had a fight with his girlfriend, who was also a deaf mute, he would climb a building or a bridge or something and put on a spectacle. And we knew he wasn't going to jump. And I remember one day when we scared the hell out of the duty captain, because we know this guy. And it was actually me and Vinny Dance on this job, God rest his soul. And we know this guy. And I'm not making fun of the death, but he would just do that moan thing. And the duty captain was in a panic. Oh, this guy, we got the sign language guy coming. And, there's roof rocks on some of the buildings. Like they have little pebbles on some of the roofs. So he starts throwing roof rocks at us. And I don't know if it was me or Vinny. He said, you do that again, we're going to push you off. And the dude was like, no, don't say that. I go, so you ain't going nowhere. So we ended up grabbing him and putting him back. It was a routine. But I ultimately heard that he did kill himself. What happened was his girlfriend was killed in a car crash. And no call or nothing, he just killed himself. It's just, one of those Bronx stories, that doesn't make any news. But, you get to know your repeat customers. Mm-hmm. We didn't have many of those in emergency. So
I'm not making fun of sign language, but I can only imagine an argument like that. It's tiring. It's exhausting if you're arguing in sign language.
We've had them before. We had the department sign language guy come in and do his thing. I mean, I was a department translator for Spanish, and I got called on the job when I was emergency. It was on midnight. I had to go all the way out to 6th truck to talk to some guy in Spanish. Yeah, and I'm sitting here like, I even forgot how to use my language. You get tired. It's like, because I don't use it that often, but it was like, wow. So imagine doing that with your hands, God bless. And the guy knew what he was doing. But yeah, but it's one of those calls. Okay, what's the next question?
Third, because you guys were right by Yankee Stadium in 3 trucks. You worked a lot of details there. Most memorable details.
That was actually 4 3. Yankee Stadium was 4 trucks.
Oh,
Actually.
4 truck. My bad. Sheesh, I'm off tonight.
Yeah.
I did
Yeah,
not
it's
sleep
okay.
well last night.
Yeah,
Most memorable
join the
detail
club.
you ever had?
Most memorable detail. I used to love the presidential details when I was on the counter assault team, the cat car. I love those, but there was one detail that was it was not counter assault. It was one of those non high profile fashionable details. It was the UN 50th anniversary, and
Oh, 95. Okay.
I had to do a lighting detail in the Bronx, a place called Jimmy's Cafe, because Fidel Castro was coming to Jimmy's Cafe in the Bronx, I guess, whatever. So there was a part of the parking lot that was like black as my background here, and I had to put up, a light tower, and that was my job, a light tower, and just make sure nothing spooky comes out of that area. So that's my job. No, now here comes the whole motorcade. It was Jimmy. They were using Jimmy Carter's limousine, if I recall, and there was something wrong with it, so they were repairing it on the spot. So I'm just standing out there on the sidewalk next to the entrance, and then here comes Fidel Castro. He's my height. He's a tall man. He looks down, and in Spanish he goes, he says my last name, Guerra. Where you from? I'm telling you where my family's from, Sabana Grande, Puerto Rico. He starts talking to me. He knows the entire history of Sabana Grande and Puerto Rico and the whole everything. And I later found out recently that he was exiled there at one point, but whatever. And here I am talking to a guy who's pretty much evil. He was a bad guy, and he's just talking. We're just having a conversation. The guy, when he said the guy can talk, he could talk. And it's funny because when he first said, come and have coffee with me, like over to the side, I had reached out to the Intel guy, and I think his last name was Martinez, and he's like, yeah, go. Just remember everything he told you. Like, I don't do spy stuff. But it wasn't anything like that. The guy was just a history buff, and he just talked my ear off. I'm just standing there like, I don't care. I'm talking to this guy killed a lot of people. It's like, it's so no. And this is the weird part. The weird part. I used to do like on a regular the cat call for the Cuban embassy. For some reason, I would always get it. And then whenever they wanted somebody, I forgot who was doing roll call. They say, if you ever need somebody to cat call, let me know. Because I got to know the guys. It was the UN representative who go to the UN, and their embassy's on 38th Street somewhere on Madison Park or whatever. And it's a simple ride, and it was just like a Sunday thing, or Saturday, whatever. I used to do it because I got to know their security guys. And at the end of the detail, hey, you want some Cubans? So you get the Cuban cigars. So it was like you're bringing back cigars to the truck. It was like a nice little thing. So anyway, they were nice guys, whatever. When I got shot, I got a diplomatic package. And I'll talk about this is years later. Now I was supposed to do the details. Let me correct that. I had to do the detail the Sunday, the day before my shooting. On the 13th, I had scheduled for that detail. And they had asked, where's Big Joe? And he's like, no, he got shot last night, and this and that. And it's like, oh wow. So apparently that got back to the guy from the embassy, from their embassy, and it got back to, that's what people told me, Castro has a memory like an elephant.
Yep.
I got a diplomatic package from the Cuban government, which, some people like raised eyebrows because I was getting gift baskets and stuff at home from, the shooting. I got a phone call from the vice president, just people just, giving me baskets. And I'm blind as a bat. I was blind for 6 months. So they're like, this is from Cuba, some Cuban diplomatic, whatever. And it turned out, and Intel, cleared it or whatever. It's from Castro and their detail. They sent me cigars and Cuban rum. And I'm sitting there like, okay, is this gonna put me on the radar? I'm not a Cuban fan. I'm not, I'm gonna get the Cuban. I was just like, I'm a kid I'm Puerto Rican from the Bronx.
Right.
But it was just like weird, it was like, wow. And he goes, no, and the Intel guy goes, no, that guy's got a memory like an elephant. And it was just gave me the whole story. It was just that was one of the most memorable things ever because, years later, because the UN's 50 was like 96 something or 95.
95.
And here in 2000, I guess, lets you know that their security services are up to speed on anybody dealing with them. So you got to put it that way. What's the next question?
Listen, I can't have too much of beef with them because they did give us, as a Yankee fan, they did give us El Duque. So that.
Well, I'll say I have no problem with the Cuban people. I'm just saying it was just my thing is that's funny. No, it was just one of those things that was just memorable. I'm like, wow, Fidel Castro, and I remember having that conversation with him, and then I found out later on, a friend of mine who's a historian, he told me that he knew, and the the writer was last name was Guerra, not related to me or anything, but that's where I don't know. He put things together. I don't know. Same exact name. Jose Guerra was a writer who wrote a book about him in Spanish. He showed me the book, and I was like, wow. But who knew?
Yeah, lovely man. Fourth, favorite bar or restaurant in New York City?
Oh gosh, so many didn't survive the silliness that was been going on. This pandemic. My favorite spot has always been to this day is the airport diner, the Jackson Hole in Astoria.
Yep.
That place. I just love their burgers and I love their onion rings and great place. I mean, I used to like Patsy's too. Patsy's Pizza was good in the Bronx. If you talk about good pizzas, another place that if you talk about a place to go eat, I always like New Park on Crossway Boulevard, New Park Pizza. But most of the restaurants that I like are gone.
I know it's a sad part, especially after the last 2 years.
Yeah, exactly. So, Molly Khan is another good one. It's a Dominican restaurant. It's over 95th Street in Amsterdam, right up the block from the 2-4. It's a nice little, I'm never do anything fancy, just good food.
Yeah, exactly. That's all it's about. And the last question, if you can grab an ECOP fresh out of STS, given your experiences in ESU between housing, emergency rescue, and of course truck 3, what advice would you give them?
I was blessed because when I went into emergency, that you had a lot of old timers, and it sucks. Like I'm an old timer now, but I had old timers who had a lot of experience, and when they talk to you, listen to them, pick their brain. I mean, a lot of stuff that was taught to me verbally saved my life and came into play in that shooting and some of the other critical jobs that I was on. That and train. You don't want to be that guy who can't start up a tool. You don't want to be the guy that misses a shot. You don't want to be that guy. I mean, it's great to like walk around with this patch and you're the man, you're the woman, but you have to earn that. And the only way you earn that is you build up such a confidence within your abilities that when you get the fight or flight response, and I teach this now, the more you train, the more likely you're going to have that fight response. Your attitude towards training and towards the job, you're going to have that fight response as opposed to that flight response. If you're one of these guys that's just kind of like just going along and hanging out and not really getting to do the job, when the critical situation, and I've seen it, so the critical situation happens, and you know what, being an emergency service, your chances are that it's going to happen. Might not happen 2 years, 3 years, it's going to happen. And you know what, you better be up to speed. You better do what you got to do. I mean, like I said, I'm no superhero, but when those shots came, my bunker was up. Those guys went home because of what I did, and I'm not doing it because I'm some freaking superhero. It was just I took my training seriously. That was one of the many things that I loved about my partner. I still love him to death, Rodell Glover. Me and him were always doing scenarios. We were always talking about what we're gonna do, this and that. We took our training seriously. Even the few times we had range time, we went there and we did it like train like you fight. Yeah, that's the way you're supposed to do it. And that attitude, it's gonna come in handy. That, and then again, pick senior guys' brains, because I tell you, some of the guys that I was picking their brains, and these guys were doing it back in the day with a 38 and a shotgun, and they were walking around with a big giant turtle vest. They did the job with minimal tools, minimal equipment, but it's the mindset. It's the mindset.
It's the greatest tool of all up here.
Yeah, but train your brain to be this you got to be an operator, so to speak. And I don't want to get into that whole tier 1 whatever, but you have to think outside the box. You have to be smart too. It's not always about your tools. You got to have what we used to call the gift of gab. You got to talk people down. You have to have this empathy. You're dealing with people, learn people. That's what the best thing about this job, especially when I was a patrolman, is like I watch people. To this day, I still watch people. I'm trying to put that into my son's brain. Listen, just watch people. Watch the way they act. Just you just gotta keep your eyes open. But I really emphasize training, because training is when all hell breaks loose, when the shots are being fired or someone's throwing hands or just all hell's breaking loose. You're going forward. You have no choice. You can't run. You go forward. And that's your job. And at the end of the day, who's calling? It's usually another cop. You know, you're the go-to guy, girl. You're it. No time to be, Minnie Mouse or, oh, we had one guy in the unit who was new, and I'm not going to mention his name, but has the utmost respect for him because he went to the emergency, and then he was in some job that was whatever, and he turned around and he says, "This isn't for me." And none of us like broke his shoes. We're like, okay, we just want to make sure you land somewhere good, because it took a lot of courage for him to say that this was not for him, and it's not for everybody. We downplay it because we're well, I hate to use that term, but most of us are alphas. It is what it is. But some people think that they could do this job, whether it's being a cop or just especially emergency service, or that's it. That this is the unit, and you find out this is not for you. For you to admit that takes a lot of courage. It takes a lot of stones to go like, hey, I don't want to put anybody in danger. This is not for me. And we took care of that guy. We're not going to make fun of him. We're not going to break his shoes. That stays with us. And like, hey, man, we'll make sure that you go somewhere where you belong. And that's the beauty of this department, that it's so big that there's places for people like that. Could have been a great cop, but it might not be a great ESU cop. Yeah. Not everybody can do this job. There's a lot to it. People can find out that they have issues, phobias with confined space, scared of heights, just the whole notion of blood, dealing with the insects. One of my phobias is freaking roaches. I hate those giant water bugs. That's why I used to hate man unders. And when I was doing a man under and something was on my back, my partner's like, I was like, please don't tell me it's not a roach. And he's like, no, it's a giant rat. You don't feel it? I'm like, oh, that's fine. A rat I could take. A water bug, I'm gonna end up shooting my back or something, because I don't want that thing on me. But yeah, everybody has their thing, but you gotta overcome that, especially confined space. Some people freak out when they put a full, self-contained, whole level A suit on you. You think you can't breathe, and it sucks to find that out under stress, or if that's your issue and you play it off during training, but now you got a real life job going, where you're going into a dangerous agent. There's actually some sort of, chemical or gases that can hurt you, and that's not the time to freak out and take the mask off. It's not for you. It's not for everybody. It is what it is, and that's my advice to you is going into emergency. Think about it, and I tell you, we make it look easy.
It's not.
It's not. It's not. There's guys. Don't get me wrong. There's been guys in this unit who have just like really gotten over. But for the guys who are really into it, and there's a lot more of those guys, thank God. They knew the job, and you can learn off each other. Everybody's an expert in their own little field. There's some guys that prefer certain jobs over others. Like, I can't stand water jobs, but you go to one truck, and those guys got gills. They love water jobs. It's like, hey, you knock yourself out.
Cough, Kenny Winkler, cough.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and it's like, God bless, man. Guys, dive in there. I dove in that East River. It's disgusting. I'm not. It's not my thing. But then I like gun jobs. I want to be the first one through the door. I want to be the guy with the MP5. That's what I like. That and I like medical jobs. I was an EMT before I was a cop. So medical jobs are great. That was rescue. Some rescue jobs are great. So just having an attitude. You go into SDS, go in there knowing that that you might have a job where you're going to be really high up, hanging by a rope, and you're it. You're it, and you can't turn around and go, I'm not doing it, and know that what you're taught, like knots. Somebody's life is going to be in your hands, and it's going to be another ECOP, and you don't want to be the guy that doesn't know how to tie a knot, and the guy's going over the side of a building. It's the same thing with know your guns. And you practice at the range. If you don't get enough range time, then go to a private range. You want to be surgical with that gun. If you have to use it, you're the gun squad. You want to be surgical with that. It is what it is. So that's the only advice I give to guys. It's a great unit. It's still, to me, the best unit on this job. It's a classy place to be. It is. It's pretty cool. You get to do a lot of things that a lot of cops don't get to do nationwide. It's just, if you're part of FEMA, you get to go to other places and make a big difference. And God bless. Who wouldn't want to do that stuff?
Of course.
But you still have to pay the rent, so to speak.
No, of course.
To,
And
to,
the last thing I'll mention is if you go to other units, like you mentioned hostage, it's got an ESU imprint. I mentioned the bomb squad earlier, got a big ESU imprint. A lot of the guys there are former E-men, a lot of them. So it's a unit that not only represents well in its own right with what they're doing day in and day out, the guys that go from there to other places often carry that same spirit, mentality, attitude, whatever you want to call it.
absolutely. In the private sector too. If you
Mhm.
go into like something like dignitary protection, I went into dignitary protection and I beat out a lot of guys just based on my resume. And these are guys with 30 plus years, 20 years on a job. But if now I'm putting them down. But if you work the 13th precinct and you're a TS or you're a summons guy, it's not the same as being a ESU cop for 10
Yeah,
years, 12 years, 11 years, whatever. And that counts for something.
yeah, it
And
does.
it's well respected with other agencies too.
Absolutely. This has been phenomenal. Stick around. We'll say goodbye off the air. Before I just say goodbye to the audience, you want to give a shout out to anyone or anything?
Hey, so the guys who are still around, I mean, I would really like to see more guys instead of seeing them at funerals, which just seems to be like the new retirement party. It's like I hate to say it that way. We see each other at sad events. And shout out to REMA, the Retired E-Man Association. They're doing a great, phenomenal job trying to keep us, together in the loop. And the new guys, hey, pick our brains. The guys coming to Mercy, grab the retired guys. I don't like saying the word old. We're vintage, but we're, we
Retro.
got, yeah, red. I like vintage, like a fine wine. Um, no, just pick our brains. I can't think of anybody who say, "Nah, I don't want to talk to you about something." No, we'll give you some advice and you something to put in your toolbox. You can use it, you don't, but it's in your toolbox, and you'd be surprised what stuff comes to you in a critical situation. You'd be surprised. Some of the stuff that it's just judging from my experience, the stuff that came to me that literally saved my life on several occasions. It is what it is.
Well, thanks to everybody that tuned in tonight. It was a great show. I want to thank you guys as always for being here, especially the ESU guys that tuned in tonight. Thank you very much. I appreciate it. Now, tomorrow, coming up next on the Mike to New Haven podcast, he spent his entire career in the Bronx. He started out in Ladder 19, and then in 2001, he went to Rescue 3, stayed there until 2005. For those of you in the loop about the FDNY, and maybe you recall this too, Joe, there was the Black Sunday fire of January 23rd, 2005. Numerous firefighters were killed in two separate incidents in the city, and he was critically injured in this one. He had to jump 4 stories. He lived, and tomorrow I'll tell the tale about it. His name's Jeff Cool, and he'll join me for volume 25 of the best and bravest interviews with the FDNY's elite. In the meantime, on behalf of Joe Guerra, this has been volume 21 of the E-Men inside the NYPD's Emergency Service Unit. Have a great rest of your night, everybody. We will see you next time, and as the E-Men like to say, anytime, baby. Good night.